We've mentioned this a couple of times before, so you might already be aware, but a couple of weeks ago, there were some major moves against Brexit and May's Brexit plan. There was the anti-Brexit petition, which we're going to talk about in this video, as well as a huge protest which took place in London. The protest is actually the topic of a video we're going to release later today. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell icon so that you're notified when that video comes out. Also following us across our other social accounts so we can share exclusive content with you and let you know when those videos are going to be published. Anyway, back to the petition. It called for the UK to cancel Brexit by revoking Article 50. It's safe to say that it was pretty successful, breaking the record for the most signed petition on Parliament's website ever. In fact, so many signatures that they made the website crash. The way the petitions work in the UK is that if they get 10,000 signatures, the government will respond to the petition. If they get 100,000 signatures, then there'll be a debate held on it. So this vote pretty comfortably hit the 10,000 and 100,000 margin, so it was debated by MPs earlier this week. Statistically, considering how many people subscribe to this channel, and the percentage of you that are from the UK, and the political leanings of the audience, it's likely that at least a few thousand of you signed the petition. You're likely curious what the outcome was then. What did MPs agree to in the debate? Well, let's take a look. And if you're confused why this room looks different to the normal ornate house you're used to, this is the Grand Committee Room, commonly referred to as Westminster Hall. And it's just a short walk away from the House of Commons.
Order, order. We come first to a debate entitled Leaving the European Union, based on 3 e-petitions, and I call Catherine McKinnell to move the motion.
Thank you, and I beg to move that this House has considered the motion. It's a real pleasure to lead this incredibly important debate on behalf of the Petitions Committee, because as honourable members will be aware, the committee decided to schedule a single debate on all 3 Brexit-related petitions because we wanted to ensure that all 3, having reached the 100,000 threshold, were debated as soon as possible so that they would not be overtaken by events.
2 other petitions were discussed during this session, one which achieved over 180,000 signatures and requested another referendum, and another with 170,000 signatures which demanded MPs honour the result of the referendum.
But the fact is that with the date of the 1st of April, I must confess to hoping right up until noon today that the Prime Minister was at some point today going to reveal to the nation that the government's entire handling of Brexit has actually been the most painstaking and elaborate April Fool's Day hoax carried out in history, and that she does in fact have a plan to get us out of this mess. But regrettably, that didn't happen, and we are still in a national crisis. And as such, with just under 2 weeks to go until the next deal or no deal deadline, we find ourselves through the looking glass here in Westminster Hall, debating potential Brexit outcomes at exactly the same time that colleagues are in the main chamber continuing to deliberate ways out of this ludicrous situation. A national conversation which should clearly have been led and listened to by the Prime Minister right at the start of this historic process.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. She will be as disappointed as I am. All of our constituents have been signing up to the big petition to revoke Article 50. 32% of my electorate in South Edinburgh has signed up to it. She'll be as disappointed as I am that the Prime Minister and the government, given them such a message, just simply dismissed those people and not go to action anything that they've said.
So my honourable friend raises a really important point, and that is why today's debate is so important, to get these issues aired and to make sure that we get answers from the government minister. And indeed, I know that many thousands signing these petitions alongside a small minority of honourable members in this House would strongly advocate that the UK should have left the EU on Friday without a deal. And it's clear for some that leaving the EU as quickly as possible has become of paramount importance in order to deliver on a narrow outcome of a referendum held almost 3 years ago, regardless of whether there remain any coherent, cogent arguments for pursuing that course of irrevocable action, and regardless of the circumstances in which this might take place and the potential consequences for our country.
If the Prime Minister is able to bring her deal back to the House for us to keep voting it down, then it is about time she puts her deal back to the public with the option to remain.
It's a strong point, and I make the argument that I'm very clear about what the potential ramifications are of the Prime Minister's Brexit deal. I've set out very clearly my concerns about exiting with no deal. But I'm prepared to accept that there are many people in my constituency who voted to leave and who want to leave the European Union, which is why my opinion is that if this Brexit deal is the best deal available, if it's the only deal available, which is what the Prime Minister and the EU have told us, that we should have, that the government should have the courage of their convictions and put it back to the people for them to have the final say.
Let's just try this new form of democracy a bit more. Let's supposing that her party, the Labour Party, gets its wish and there's a general election, and guess what? The Labour Party wins and Mr Corbyn becomes Prime Minister. And then some of us who didn't like the result set up a petition and get 6 million people to say that, no, we ought to revoke that result and do it again. Would she be satisfied with that?
Could I just clarify for the honourable gentleman, because he doesn't seem to understand the nature of a petition, which is a very long-established process in Parliament. But as a member of the Petitions Committee, we process a whole range of petitions on any subject you can imagine. But no petition has received the number of signatures that this petition has. And he seems somewhat irked by that. But it doesn't replace our normal democratic processes. It simply is a reflection on, I will in a moment, it's simply a reflection of the level of interest in this issue and the strength of feeling from the public, which I think as representatives of our constituents, we ought to be very grateful for, that they have the means to make their voices heard. And this petition is a raw. I give way.
As someone who was elected here to represent her constituency, I find it extremely useful in the difficult decision-making process we're going through at the moment that I have the figures that more than 15,000 people in my constituency signed that petition. And I think it holds us well to pay attention to what our constituents are telling us.
Does the Honourable Lady not agree with me that this petition and those in this place that actually support it are actually only have one goal, and that is to overturn the referendum result?
No, I completely disagree with that. And I have already set out very clearly my views and my concerns, which I actually think are shared by a huge number of people. But I absolutely share the concerns that have been expressed by those calling for a public vote on the outcome of the Brexit negotiations, because I didn't come into politics to make my constituents poorer. I didn't get elected to this place to drive my country and its economy off a cliff. Yeah.
Perhaps the Honourable Lady then would like to tell us why it was that the Remain Bank of England Treasury forecast for what would happen in the first 2 years after a leave vote, when they said there would be a recession, there'd be big job losses, there'd be an investment collapse, there'd be a share market collapse and a house building problem. And the reverse of all those things happened, with jobs up, no recession. We now have better growth than Germany or Italy. Why do they get it so wrong?
Many of the predictions that were made, that we would see a stall in investment, it's happened. That we would see the economy affected, it has happened. That we would see, and even where we have jobs and increased jobs, which the government often likes to talk about, we see more and more people using food banks and struggling to make ends meet. So if anyone suggests that we are somehow better off now than we were in 2016, they are wrong. And all the projections going forward show that we are only going to be greater impacted.
In 2016, the MPs and the government and the opposition, everybody agreed that they were going to take the view of the electorate directly and that they would obey the verdict that the electorate gave them.
I mean, we could go over, we could rerun the 2016 referendum campaign. We can debate the rights and wrongs and the arguments for and against over and over. I would say for my position, I didn't vote for the referendum, and I didn't vote to invoke Article 50 for the very reason that I could see us setting a clock ticking on a negotiation without an agreed strategy or plan. there are also many members in this House that weren't even elected at the time of the referendum because we had a general election. And that general election returned a hung Parliament. And so we are where we are. And what this petition is looking at is the immediate possibility that we have staring us in the face, which is a no-deal exit from the European Union, which is the legal default position. And so I'd be interested to know what he thinks, rather than going over the history. You know, is he genuinely happy for this economy just to be driven off a cliff with all of the ramifications?
I actually think that there are three possibilities. There's the government's deal, there's leaving on WTO terms, or there's revoking the result of the referendum. And I, together with 158 of my colleagues, which is more than half the Conservative Parliamentary Party, voted in the multiple options that we were given about a week ago, voted that we should leave on WTO terms, and I think that would be the right solution.
This evening, MPs are going to get another chance to have their say outside of these petition discussions. That's because they're set to hold a third round of indicative votes. On Tuesday, we discussed the second round and what MPs decided on. So if you missed that, there's a link in the description. Also, we'll be covering the third round too, with a video out on that topic on Thursday morning. Make sure you're subscribed and have hit the bell icon so that you don't miss that. Also follow us across our other social channels so we can share exclusive content with you and notify you when our videos and articles are released.